Alright, what's going on, you guys? It's your boy 3 Stacks in this thing, baby, representing TKOG. And today I'm going to be updating SHADDOLLs for you guys. This list is going to be called A.I.D.S. This is ALBAZ INVOKED dolls. This is probably my best list up to date, you guys. It's the most potent, it's the most consistent, it's giving me the best results. And it's honestly been very cracked. Like, going second, it just feels so good, this format. This deck just has an absolutely... Hold on. What was that? This deck just has an absolutely nasty Sword Soul matchup. A very just free Dragon Link matchup. I'm talking about going first and going second. This deck can literally just put the brakes on any deck. Whether it's a trap deck, the buy. Whether it's Flunders, you set up... If you're going first, you're setting up Kaliga, you're winning. And if you're playing against any other deck, Winda, literally, I win, duh. Like, bro, this deck is cracked. Absolutely insane going first and going second against every deck that's not either A, Scythe locking you and you don't have a Super Poly or an El Shaddol Fusion, B, putting you under Abyss Dweller, or C, putting you under Dimension Shifter. So if you're not under any of those three aforementioned kind of lingering effects, you pretty much have a chance to beat any deck and break any board regardless of what it looks like. I have shown video proof consistently and multiple times throughout just you guys seeing this journey with me playing this deck. I have shown you guys this deck can break any board virtually. It's so good. It's so powerful. It's so durable. It's so consistent. It has such a great grind game. It has a snowballing factor. It not only gains the advantage that it needs, but it maintains it. It's able to switch tempos. It has really incredible one-for-one trades. Economically speaking, this deck can literally pretty much just change the entire tempo of the duel off of resolving one card. It can break boards off of 1 and 2 cards. It has so many clutch combos. And it's a mid-range deck, so you really don't have to play it like a combo deck if you don't want to. But the fact that it can combo off if need be just gives this deck just such a well-rounded feeling. The kind of what I mentioned when I talk about Skystrikers, it feels like it's just a jack of so many different trades and a master of quite a few of them as well. It just has such a great, diverse toolbox. It has so much different grounds that it can cover in matchups. The utility that the SHADDOLLs themselves give you really give this deck strengths that it doesn't naturally have. The ability to be able to deal with floodgates, cards like Rivalry, goes in Summon Limit, Anti-Spell, and Skill Drain. Typically, most decks need non-engine to out those cards, but the fact that this deck can out them with engine just makes it such a powerful and, like I said, well-rounded beast of a deck. In regards to matchup, we talked about Sword Soul, we talked about Dragon Link. Those two decks have been very popular. This deck is absolutely disgusting against Branded Despia. Your only bad matchup is going to be Flunderies. And even in the new format, I've shown you guys, well, I haven't uploaded yet, but I have a video where I'm breaking through the Splite board with pure engine. The tier element matchup is going to be such a great matchup, especially if they're actually using those Ishizu cards against me. Yeah, this deck is just very strong. If you haven't done so already, definitely subscribe to this channel. Make sure you leave a like and a comment to help your boy on the algorithm. Click the links in the description box below if you want to join my Discord or sign up for the Patreon and receive tutoring/coaching from me. All those are available. It's a give and give kind of thing, you know, it's mutually beneficial. So yeah, let's go ahead and get into this list. There's a lot to talk about, and honestly, like I said, this deck has just been amazing for me. It's been so good. A lot of the times going second, it's just been feeling like, dude, I literally like blind seconding with this deck. I like that this deck is so powerful when it comes to breaking boards and making its own board in the process. Oh man, this deck is so good. And it navigates out of sticky situations where you can outplay your opponent just through sheer technical play and proper resource management. This deck with pure engine can accomplish feats that most decks need their side deck access to even be able to come close. It's amazing what this deck can do. It's just so powerful. I've played through Valor, Crow, Strike, Appaloosa, and Revolt in the same turn. You guys have seen me crack through 5-6 interruptions, 3 hand traps plus 3 negates. I mean, dude, this deck is just absolutely insane. Probably the craziest board, I made a random board with this deck, and I showed you guys this deck breaking through Infinity, Borreload Savage, Dragoons, and Dragite, all in the same turn. Basically, it was like a Spell Trap negate and 3 Omni negates, and it broke through it consistently. SHADDOLLs have just been my go-to deck for so long, you guys. It's such a fun deck. And honestly, it's a very, very good deck to play if you're getting into the game and you're trying to understand certain sequences in regards to just mechanics of the game, you know, chain blocking, cards activating in different areas. You know, it's just a really, really good deck. You guys can clearly see I'm a huge advocate of this deck. So let's get started with the list without any further rambling. So here's my starters. I'm going to lay them out first, and then we'll get deeper into it, you know, once we lay out those starters. I know how people can be, and I definitely don't want to take up too much of your time. So here's the starters. So I'm going to lay them all out, and we'll talk about them. So in regards to starters, these are the cream of the crop. These are the best cards you can draw. I'm definitely going to say this format, El-Shaddol Fusion, has been overperforming like it always does. Bro, I ain't going to lie, bro. This card is cracked, yo. This card allows me to play around cards that I have no business playing around. I shouldn't be able to just activate Op Cologne, target Skill Drain, and chain El-Shaddol Fusion. Or summon Construct and chain El-Shaddol Fusion and just out Skill Drain. I shouldn't be able to just outplay cards like Summon Limit, Anti-Spell, Artifact, Scythe. Cards like Rivalry of the Warlords, Gozen Match. You know, this card enables such sometimes unfair gameplay. This card is such a rewarding and gratifying card in this deck. You're able to maneuver around cards like Droll and Valor because you're able to activate this card in a phase that doesn't involve basically you're able to activate it in the draw or the standby phase, and if you activate this in the draw phase and you're getting searches off, you're not able to get Drolled yet. When it comes to Droll, which is really popular this format, the Invoke cards might struggle a little bit, but the SHADDOLL cards allow you to just power through Droll and Lancia, which are the biggest weaknesses for the Invoke cards, where the Invoke cards cover grounds with cards like Ash Blossom and Ghostbell, which are really, really, these cards are a big deal. Even sometimes Alistair will beta DD Crow, which is really, really good because those hand traps particularly have such a high impact against SHADDOLLs at times. So that's what I meant by the covering grounds and just supplementing weaknesses, how one engine supports the other so well. It's like a match made in heaven. The other cool benefit with having access to Alistair is it gives you pseudo battle protection for cards like Winda. It just enables so much more unfair aspects of the deck. It gives you the ability to access cards like Kaliga and Makaba and Raijin, which are just a huge deal this format. Kaliga is just way too overpowerful to even exist. I don't even know why the card was printed, but Kaliga has literally been like the FTK. It's most of the time been better than Winda simply because it gives me the perfect counterplay to the Flunderies matchup where I can literally do the exact same thing they do to me, I can do it to them. So yeah, you guys, this deck's boards are very unfair. It naturally replaces everything that you do with this deck is just like in a recursive manner. A lot of the cards that you commit to the board replace themselves in more ways than one and set up a snowballing factor where you have a loop of ongoing and just recurring resources that are constantly funneling back into your hand every single turn. What you do on your first board and your first turn board can set you up for the rest of the duel, my guy. So yes, very, very, very well put together deck, very strong. It's just so good at so many different things. Like I said, it really just outplays so many different decks and so many different interactions. With this card, literally, you have no business being able to do the things that L lets you do, and that's the bare minimum. We're not even talking about the OTKs that it enables. We're not even talking about dodging targeting effects. We're just it's just cracked, you guys. Even when it comes to Meltdown in certain matchups, if you have Meltdown and you activate a fusion spell, it really puts your opponent in an awkward situation because if you're going after back rows or if you're summoning cards like Op Cologne or Construct, it enables you to just deal with so many different disruptions without your opponent having a chance to respond. These cards are just insane in so many different regards. Alistair just being basically, this is like 7 extra call by the Graves. Because if you guys didn't know this when I play this deck, I have such a high value on the SHADDOLL cards that I will use everything else as a throwaway. The way I structure and prioritize my plays, if I'm navigating through a board that's established going second, or if I'm playing first, I always put the highest priority on the SHADDOLL cards. They have the best mileage, they have the best recovery, and they're going to give me the strongest win conditions most of the time. And they are equipped with a toolbox that gives me a diversity in the turns of my disruptions. Whether I'm summoning a Squamata or a dragon with Resh Engrave just to have a disruption under Dark Ruler, setting up cards like Winda, banishing with the triple DD Crow in the Drytron matchup, setting up Op Cologne to permanently negate anything I need, or summoning Construct just to build some tempo and advantage on my opponent's turn. The deck is just so reactive, and the proactive aspects that it has come from Kaliga and Winda, it just gives you the ability to play in any kind of style, tempo, or momentum that you want to have with this deck. It gives you all of that. So it's a really good deck. Shaddoll Fusion, I'm not going to lie, is still a better one-card starter in comparison to Branded Fusion because it doesn't have the restrictions. And because it has Shaddoll in its name, it's so much more accessible and recurable. And even if the activation gets negated, if you make like even a Winda and just link her off in a gravity controller, you can actually add this back and activate it again. It really is the most powerful fusion spell that's ever been printed. The only thing that I even compare to it is actually Void Imagination. But see, with Imagination as well as Branded Fusion, there's restrictions, whereas this card, in the circumstances where it is a one-card enabler, it has no restrictions, so there's no limitations on what you can do with it, and that is why I still truly believe, as good as Branded Fusion it is, there is no cost involved with this card. There is no downside. You know, when you're able to activate this and fuse from your deck, you can do whatever you want. But what I do like about Branded Fusion a lot is you can activate it going first, and playing through a single hand trap, you can still get access to a light attribute and a Shaddoll, which are two of the three parts of the equation that you need to be able to set up a really good board and get you some mileage out of your cards. So if you activate Branded Fusion, your opponent Ghost Mourners, Veilers affect impermanences or droplets or chalices, whatever they do to stop Lubellion, which they don't want to see Mirror Jade, right? Because she can pay costs. So then you really don't want to hold your imperm for her. You're going to be left with the Shaddoll that you dumped off of Branded Fusion, meaning you have access to a search via Squamata or Hedgehog or a Windy Summon, whether you're using Squamata to dump her. And you also have a light attribute. So if you have Shaddoll Fusion or even El Shaddoll Fusion in your hand, when you activate Branded and your Lubellion gets stopped, you can just activate these, and the Shaddoll that you got access to via Branded Fusion and the Lubellion convert themselves into a Construct. And that is a huge tempo play right there. Like, if you're resolving Construct, you can go from losing to winning in a heartbeat. It's actually crazy how this deck is able to just come back out of nowhere and off of little to nothing at all. Bare bone resources. It's such a well-designed deck. I can't say this enough. This is goated, bro. Like, this deck has been clapping cheeks till Kingdom Come for as long as probably a lot of people have been playing the game. This deck is so good, and I really just think in the new format it's going to be even better. This is one of the only decks that I have ever played in my life that has allowed me to break through more than 3 interruptions without drawing non-engine or my side deck. This is the only deck truly right now, outside of, I would probably say, Sky Strikers, whose toolbox is so versatile that your main deck can function in the regards of basically being applicable to a side deck, if that makes sense. Like, there are things that this deck can do, if I didn't say this already, that other decks can only do accessing their side deck, but Shaddolls can do it with pure engine. It's just amazing, you guys. So these are the best starters. Most of these are one-card starters in a lot of circumstances, but in combination with each other, you know, there's a lot of really, really cool technical play involved with this deck. Even when it comes to having a doll already in your hand and just dodging Mourner, you know, Veiler or Imperm or your Lubellion so that you can set up both Mirror Jade and your Shaddoll engine, you know, that's incredible, you guys. So all of these have different functions, but like I was saying, I really think L, for me, for the longest, has overperformed in regards to technical play and just the versatility that the card has. It's applicable in almost every scenario where you would be losing. Like, there are times where you have no business doing what this card enables you to do. I think it's much better than Branded in Red. Granted, Branded in Red does have, you know, a little bit more layered into it, being able to do a little bit more, but the fact that there's not really a hand trap that can stop this, and that you don't need a setup in your grave required first, makes it even better against cards like Scythe, even better against cards like Anti-Spell. And Anti-Spell and Scythe are pretty much, like I was saying, it's going to be like lingering effects. Really, the list is Dweller, Scythe, Anti-Spell, and Dimension Shifter. Those are the cards that really just don't let this deck play. And even though it's able to play in those scenarios, your cards are not going to replace themselves. You're not going to get value. And what you commit to the board, if it gets disrupted or your opponent has spot removal, you know, you're not really going to have follow-up. So it's not to say that the deck cannot play under those circumstances. It's that that those are the most difficult situations you can be put in playing against this deck. But the fact that against everything that's not shifter, your engine can actually combat those, whether you draw a side deck out or not, is actually very impressive and venerable. And that's why I definitely always give the cake to this deck, because it's just that good. Now, in regards to engine requirement, I am playing 2 Squamata, 2 Windy, 1 Beast, 1 Hog, 1 Aerial, and Aerial has been cracked all day, every day. Cards just so insane. 1 Dragon and 1 Falco. I would never cut Falco. I know people don't like him, but I love Falco. I actually enjoy summoning my dolls on my opponent's turn and having cards like Resh. And I am just going to say this like I always do. This card is so broken. It's literally like a threatening roar. If you summon Hedgehog on your opponent's turn, the amount of pressure that just a face-down Hedgehog puts on your opponent is insane. Because if they do not have a way to outplay Shaddoll Fusion, then they can't risk playing into it. So this card in certain situations has been like a max C for me, where I stifle my opponent's plays, not even by making Winda, but just the looming threat of having a Shaddoll Fusion, a Schism, or an L is enough for my opponent to... They respect my deck so much that they would play around the Shaddoll Fusion simply because I summoned Hedgehog. So there's times where the functionality of your cards can be used proactively, even though they're not designed to be that way. Because truly the only proactive cards that you have in your arsenal are Kaliga and Winda. Everything else is very reactive and responsive, and technically is very fair. You know, there's not a lot of unfair things that this deck does outside of Winda and Kaliga. But the amount of just different plays that you can produce utilizing the actual Shaddoll monsters is kind of insane, you guys. There's so many different scenarios where you would not be able to play out of that if you didn't have access to these cards. So I put a very high value on the Shaddoll monsters in my deck, more than anyone that I know, because most people only care about Winda and they don't like these cards. They actually hate drawing Shadolls, they feel they're bricks and they're not worth playing. But I believe that these cards are so valuable and they're so worth it to me that I'd rather play them and not... I'd rather have them and not need them than need them and not have them. Because I just feel that this deck performs so well, not because of Winda, but because of the archetype itself. Like the Shaddoll archetype itself. It just does so many things that a lot of decks cannot do. And even if they can, they can't do it at the level that this deck's able to do it. We have 2 ALBAZ. I typically use one on my full combo off Branded Fusion to make constructs, so I always need the second one on the crackback. Just so that my Branded Fusions can keep resolving, and then I'll Lubellion back the first one so that I can always have it just in case. Because Mirror Jade sometimes is just, you need to have it, you know, just having that non-targeting, non-destruction removal in a pinch. Because like you'll have Schism, like in your Dragon Link matchup, most of the time that board's easy to break through, but sometimes you just can't kill the Whirlwind yet. So you need like Schism. But if you don't have your doll engine, you always want to make sure that your branded engine can be able to out the Whirlwind for you. The Invoke engine is not going to actually be able to out the Whirlwind unless you're playing Elysium, you know? So it's also just really nice that you have those outs. And I'm not going to lie, this card's kind of cracked if you're playing Lenitus, which I'm not playing right now, but I have been thinking about it because Dragon Link's just really popular, and it makes this less of a brick to draw, you know? And going second, he's kind of still insane. Like, if you summon him and you just fuse off and make a Lubellion, if you discarded a Shaddoll for cost, that's really nasty because you're making Construct. And then I have Snow. Snow's been better than Golden Lord for me, so I've been on Snow for a minute. Ever since she came back, I was like, yo, this card's just way too good to not play. It's literally, it just functions as a disruption where Golden Lord can really only function as like an added layer of pressure or a spot removal. Snow can kind of cover different grounds where just Golden Lord cannot, you know? Speaking of Eldritch, this deck has an insane Eldritch matchup. Like, you literally, I'm pretty sure I've explained how this deck's able to out skill drain with cards like El and Super Poly, fusing away Construct and Opclone. But it's also, those same cards allow you to deal with Summon Limit, Goes In, and Rivalry, which are the most popular floodgates that deck's going to be playing. And that's excluding the fact that a lot of the cards Eldritch uses doesn't really have an impact against your deck except Walkero. And most of the time, you're able to banish Golden Lord with your Invoked engine or your Shaddoll cards. And Schism, just being able to sing Golden Lord every turn is just crazy. There's so many tempo swings that you get out of this engine. It's just ridiculous. So defensive cards, I'm playing Gamma. and talents. You have 7 call buys via Alistair, but then you kind of have like 6 more with Gamma and talents. These reinforce certain plays that I need to go through. And so, like I said, the way I sequence my plays is I prioritize my Shaddol cards. And if you guys have seen my breaker boards, which I definitely recommend you watch those, if you guys have seen me breaking boards with this deck, you will notice that it was never ever a feat that was achieved or accomplished when it came to breaking those boards where the Shaddol cards did not play a vital function or role in the process of breaking that board. And so a lot of the cards that I put into my deck are more meant to kind of protect my Shaddol plays, to enable them to just resolve in situations where most of the time an Ash might just be it. You know, if I have Shaddol Fusion and it's the best play I have and they have an Ash Blossom, you know, that's a nail in the coffin. But now you got Branded Fusion, you got the Invoke cards, you've got Talents, you've got Gamma, you've got a lot of ways to check for Ash before you activate the card that you really don't want to get Ashed. And that's why I think that Gamma is the best hand trap in this deck. These operate as going first and going second cards. And if you resolve Shaddol Fusion or even Branded Fusion, whether you're going uninterrupted or you have Meltdown so you can't be interrupted, most of the time that Appaloosa doesn't matter. Most of the time that Mirajade doesn't matter. Like if you have Meltdown and you resolve a fusion spell, even if, like especially against Branded, a lot of the stuff that they can do can't even occur now. You know, you can snipe their Branded in red and they won't be able to chain it. You can permanently negate their Mirajade and they can't even, you know, use her to banish. They can only pay cost on resolution just to get something out of her. You know, it's just crazy how just having Meltdown up makes your opponent preemptively activate certain cards, because if they don't, there's a chance that those cards can actually be sniped, dismantled, or negated before they get a chance to respond, which is ridiculous because no one in their right mind is going to chain anything in the activation, in response to the activation of a spell card or an effect that includes a fusion summon, because if they do, the last thing that happens will be your fusion summon, which means any kind of effects that linger on into a new chain that your opponent has will not be able to activate. So if I activate El Shaddol Fusion with Meltdown and my opponent chains their Branded in red, out of fear that it would get sniped, they will not be able to activate any of their effects in a new chain. So basically they're summoning Masquerade and that's it. Or they're summoning a new Mirajade and that's it. There's not a lot that they can do, and that is one of the other huge strengths that this deck has. It's just the protection that Meltdown gives you allows you to outplay your opponent even further because you're forcing them to use cards in a manner that they're really not supposed to or that they don't want to, but you use it or you lose it. And so, again, just... Bruh, I literally could be a Shaddol spokesperson. For more going second cards, I'm on Super Poly. I really want that new card to come out, the fusion that requires 2 monsters with the same type and same attribute, because that makes this an even more ideal going second card for your Sprite matchup, because those little thunders, there's 2 fires and there's 2 darks. And I believe the Link is a fire as well, so if they have the little monster negator guy, and they have the Link too that summons from grave, and you Super Poly both those away, you cut off an extra toad negate and you cut off a monster negate, and you summon a card that replaces itself extremely well. So this just makes Super Poly even more of an ideal going second card in the new format. Granted, everything that I said about El Shaddol Fusion, most of the time is applicable with Super Poly. The difference is you just need something to fuse off with on the field. But we all know that Super Poly in the Shaddol deck is just insane. And then I'm still on Mystic Mine. Yeah, you can hate it if you want. It's just a tempo card. You can deck people out if you want to be a douche, but most of the time it's a tempo card. You're just using it to consolidate resources for a big push. And you're gonna force your opponent to play in a different manner when it's up. We're playing Called By. It's way too good in the new format. Being able to hit tier elements to chain Called By to Toad. If you activate Meltdown and they Toad negate it, you know, you can chain Called By while you still have no monsters, and they can't chain their elf to bring Toad back because you just activate Meltdown. You have no monsters, so it literally outs 2 of their disruptions, and your Meltdown resolves, which means it's just game over. Because that monster negation that they have, monster negations are not very good against this deck at all. Your power spells chain block through monster negates. So if your opponent has a board full of monster negates and spot removals, if you activate 1 fusion spell, it can dismantle all of those. You can literally, if you play Genius in your list, you can out Shinshin, Chuche, and Crystal Wing off of 1 Shaddol Fusion. You can out an Appaloosa, another like crazy monster like Jackal King or something, and a Floodgate, all with just one Shaddoll fusion. And Duster is a main deck mine out. It has that function and it just being Duster. But the most important thing was, even though I'm on 45, I just still felt more comfortable playing a mine out this format because it's just getting really, really popular. So what used to be Set Rotation and Secret Village became Called By and Feather Duster. And even though Set Rotation does outmine, you know, the Set Rotation in the Secret Village, I just feel is not going to be as impactful as Duster and Call By, because it's two different kinds of cards that I don't really have effects that are replaceable. Like, these are just kind of in a league of their own. You know, they're one-ups for a reason. But with Set Rotation and Secret Village, the only thing that would give me is like a stronger going first turn one board, which is why you want to side deck your Secret Village, because if you have Secret Village, Kaliga, Winda, there's literally nothing anybody can do unless you're playing purple cards. And if they're playing purple cards, you just win by default because you're playing Shaddolls. One Schism and one Resh. Resh has been something I've been considering bumping up to 2, because I've just really been liking just the different applications of this card and matchups. I've been getting really clever with this card lately. I haven't just been aerial comboing all the time. Most of the time in the aerial combo, I would just summon Hedgehog instead and search Schism. I'll even sometimes summon Dragon or Skomata face down and leave this engraved, so that I have like double Winda point of interaction with Kaliga, and I have a spot removal with cards like Dragon and Skomata. So if they like Dark Ruler and Droplets, I can still flip the Skomata or the Dragon and disrupt them. And that comes at a different point of interaction, which makes it harder for your opponent to pretty much... A lot of the times, it's not even like something that your opponent can telegraph, because people really don't know that Shaddolls can do that kind of stuff. People don't really respect the flip effects enough. They kind of just look at it as the Winda deck. So they don't really respect your deck enough to properly navigate through those kind of like interruptions that you can set up. And they don't really, it's not something that's just like an ongoing thing in their mind. It's not like a looming threat that they're considering. The only thing they care about is Winda, because they don't think that your deck can do anything without Winda, which is kind of sad because you can do a lot without Winda. We're on double construct, but Obcolone has been the beast this format. This has been the card that overperforms the most. In regards to my extra deck, Obcolone has just been the king lately. It's really, really hard to kill. It's really hard to get over. The card, it literally just outs so many different problem cards, and every time you're chain blocking. So it's just broken. Like, and if you have Meltdown, you don't even care about Droplet Imperm. Card is just absolutely ridiculous. It's just way too good. Recycling my extra deck, looping it with Resh and Falco, it's just infinite recursion. Double Winda. Winda is definitely correct to play it too. There has even been a time where I set up like a quote-quote triple Winda because I had Aerial face down with Resh and Grave and I didn't flip it on my turn, because my thought process was, if the only way I lose this duel is if my opponent has a double out to Winda. But if he has a double out to Winda and one of those Windas gets sent to the grave, I can use Resh to flip Ariel and bring her back. So he has to out-Winda 3 times. And another cool thing is, you know, obviously Alistair giving you that battle protection, because Winda is already pretty protected herself, but having the Alistair in hand just makes it that much harder to get over her. Because you'll have like weird plays with like Lost World Normal Dino where they'll normally be able to out-Winda with just a normal summon. You got Makaba, A.I.D.S. Raijin is primarily for your Flunder matchup. It allows Super Poly to be a lot more, like, it pretty much just a lot more impactful in that matchup, because when you think about it, there's not really any other time where Super Poly is going to matter. So it also kind of justifies main decking Super Poly more, because that is your worst matchup, and you want to have as many blowouts as you can get, because that deck is just crazy. But just having Alistair with Super Poly outs the Barrier Statue and Impin and forces them to flip the trap and start playing. If you have like a Talents, it's just kind of just GG right there. Because all you really need to do is set up Kaliga and OTK them on the follow-up. Speaking of Kaliga, broken. Card is just way too unfair. Honestly, as crazy as Winda is, this card a lot of the times just feels better. It's just, this is just, you access Winda more consistently. But there's even hands where you have like Invocation and no Alistair, and you can just Shaddoll Fusion, dump Alistair, you know. Or you can even use Branded Fusion to dump Alistair as your Dark, instead of dumping a doll when you make your Lubellion, and you turn on your Invocation, and now Alistair is your normal summon as well. So yeah, there's like a lot of cool ways where you can just make your hands work even if they don't look good. These are the 3 Branded Fusions. Just one of each. You know, you recycle with Lubellion, but you don't really, this isn't the hard like carry. You know, this is just the nice to have, it's not the need to have. What you need is the dolls mainly. And the Invoked is also just really nice to have. Artemis, and the 15th card in my extra deck is Gravity Controller. I just don't know where mine's at, so I left my extra deck at 14. If you guys like this profile, definitely let me know in the comment sections below. There's a lot that I can teach you guys in regards to playing this deck. And this format, this is just a really good choice. Even in a new format, this is a really good choice. Like I said, there's not a lot of decks that can accomplish the same feats that this deck can with its own cards. You know what I mean? A lot of decks this format need to run hand traps because their engine is not strong enough to push through 3+ disruptions, but this deck does it so frequently. It's just like a lot of the times, like I said, I just want a blind second because it's just sometimes feel even more consistent going second playing this deck than it does going first. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. God bless you. Make good choices. Don't hurt your brain cells. Stay tuned for future content. And again, definitely know how you feel about this deck profile. There's going to be some changes made moving forward to the new format, but I'm really, really confident and comfortable with this list right now. Deuces.